And we're live.
Bro, Japanese boxing is like insane.
I need to look into it a lot more. They do have some phenomenal athletes there, man. But
Bro, I get why there's not the big appeal because obviously, like, they're not huge people, so it doesn't.
exactly,
But
yeah,
the skill level is insane, man,
yeah.
and it's booming even more now because they've got more champions. They've got bigger and better athletes in there.
So they're actually building a almost like an ecosystem for boxers themselves over there, which is
Yeah,
where they're self-sufficient and not dependent on um other nations, etc. viewing, which
yeah,
you have to respect. Do you know what? It's crazy because I was even watching yesterday. Obviously, I'm not going to say they're all the same, but like, bro, the talent that's coming out of like the Far East in terms of Japan, Korea, etc. Is crazy. Even footballing wise, when you watch the Japanese national team, their tech is out of this world, and they're
yeah.
so athletic. It's just more of a size issue, pause, than anything else. Where
I feel like that's with most countries. It's like it's because they don't have the correct infrastructure in place to
yeah,
get athletes to come out there. But once they do, you start seeing that they're actually quite good at certain sports. Like that's why like in Ghana, for example, like where did he come from? Well, obviously, like him was pure chance. Though, like you obviously hear his
where he's had the bloody cross
yeah,
fucking
his whole story and everything.
where he is.
But then you
Yeah,
realize like if he had the like facilities available to him and the infrastructure, he would have come through much quicker. And there would have been guys that like that come through. So
100%. I mean, once the right infrastructures are there in West Africa, especially, it's going to be an absolute gold mine of talent in regards to combat sports, even football. Like they've started implementing a lot of academies there, etc. and whatnot, and they just produce footballers for fun. So
yeah.
yeah,
All right, let's begin. Hello and welcome to another episode of Ringside Fracas. I'm your host Naeem, and today I've got joined with me is Adam. Adam, how are you, bro?
not too bad. Thank you for asking, bro. How are you?
Good. I mean, we've had a great year, and so what better way than on the 31st of December, the last day of the year, to review the whole year of boxing? And let me just start with saying, like, I think this is probably one of the greatest years of boxing that I've been a part of in terms of just watching as a fan. It's one of the best years that I've seen, especially in recent. If you look back in the last sort of 5, 6, 7, 8 years, this has been one of the best years that boxing's had. So I can't wait to just get into everything that we've got in terms of the awards that we're giving out. Also, the shout outs that we're going to have to give out to certain people and certain fighters and fights that they've put on. So, like, there's so much to cover this year. And of course, we've got Chris joining us. Chris, how are you, bro?
What's up, lads? How you
Damn,
doing?
he looks so cool, bro. Those glasses. Oh my god.
You came correct,
Quick,
didn't it?
change quick. What you say, man? You good?
Yeah, I'm good. Let me start this camera. Yeah, I'm all right, man.
Yes, the
Shattered,
award.
bro. It's been a long Saturday.
No, yeah. I can imagine. I can imagine.
It's the award ceremony, so Chris had to come correct, didn't it?
Mm.
No, I hear it,
But I
bro.
mean, there's loads of stuff to go through, and especially like last year when we did the review, there wasn't a lot to talk about because it was a very disappointing year in terms of certain stuff. But this year we've got so much to go through, so much things, and I know certain awards that we're gonna do and go through. We're gonna have a bit of debate about them, and that's what's great about this year is that we're able to have those debates. There's no clear winner for certain awards. So I mean, what better way to start reviewing the year than going through who we think is our fighter of the year. So you know what? I'll come to you, Adam, first. Who would you say is your fighter of the year of 2020?
So, taking into consideration activity, I don't like giving fighter of the year off of just one fight alone. But there also has to be the mix of accomplishments as well. Whereas someone like Anthony Joshua, for example, who's had a very strong year in fighting 3 times, he hasn't really achieved anything of note. And then you look at the other example of Crawford, who unified his division and in spectacular fashion, but he only had that one fight during the year. So for me, I think it's a no-brainer in giving Fighter of the Year to Inoue, who unified his division. I think his last fight, so he unified the division all within the year, came up in weight and done it in spectacular fashion. And I think it's honestly a no-brainer for me at this point. Have to give it to him.
Yeah, Chris, who's your fighter of the year?
It's like I was kind of torn between the two most obvious choices. But for me, because of the scale, the magnitude, how long we've been talking about the fight, and to make the fight look so dominant and one-sided, a true 50-50 fight, a fight that people have been discussing for several years, maybe like 6 years. I think I'm gonna go with Terence Crawford. He just about edges it over Inoue for me. I know Inoue's accomplishments have been amazing. To do what he's done to unify two divisions in such a short space of time, it's obscene. But I feel like just because of the magnitude of the two fighters between Errol Spence and Terence Crawford, I think winning that fight so decisively, leaving no holds bars, no argument about decisions or scorecards, just to look so dominant that people don't even want to see the fight again, I'm going to go Terence Crawford.
Yeah, so I agree with both of you. And that's why I said one of the great things about this year was that when we're talking about fight of the year, those two are such close together. It's literally a hair's width in terms of who had a better year. They both had probably the best years of their career so far. I would have to go. I edge it to Inoue, but mainly just because of the fact that he's fought two. He didn't fight two guys that just ended up with the belts. He fought two legit world level fighters at 122 pounds, and he didn't look out of place at all in those fights. Like a lot of the times, you'll see fighters come up and they don't translate as well as when Inoue made his breakthrough in terms of when he was a world star was at bantamweight, was when he was completely going through people and getting them out of there. And then the fact that he's managed to come up to 122 pounds, especially for a guy that started at 108, and a lot of people that are trying to discredit him are saying, well, at the lower weight classes there's a smaller jump between the weight classes, but you also have to think about body percentage in terms of how much of your body weight are you adding on percentage wise to go up to that weight class. So if you imagine he's gone from 108 to 122 pounds, that's 14-pound difference. It's more than 10%, almost 20%. And to be as athletic as he is, to be as dominant as he was in those two fights. I mean, Tapales made it game. We were watching that fight together. He made it. He was game, but it wasn't a competition, if we're being honest. Like Inoue was still doing everything and getting through him. But you can't deny what obviously Terence Crawford's done. Like you said, the performance that he put in against Crawford, against Spence, will go down as something that we're going to talk about for like the next 20, 30, 40 years. Like everyone's going to keep talking about Bud. I remember we all reacted, and I do agree with this, that you could probably argue that this era is the Bud era, the way he's gone through it. And I think it's more his era as well because he's in the more popular weight classes. So it does make more sense because he's got more of the notoriety behind his name. But I'd have to give it to Inoue just because he's fought two world level guys, and he fought Fulton where everyone on paper was saying this should be a competitive bout. This should be harder for Inoue to look good against Fulton. He win, but they didn't expect him to do what he did to Fulton, because the same way that Crawford completely dominated Spence, Fulton didn't have a look in that fight at all from the first bell. Same way.
Yeah.
But I think in this one, it's kind of personal preference in terms of what you do categorize better as and what you're not. Like what? So either Crawford or Inoue, them two are the clear favorites for fight of the year. I'm edging towards Inoue, but if you've got Crawford, I feel like you've got all the arguments in the world to say that. It's the same. It's the sort of the same thing that you could say for pound number one right now. Like for me, I'd give Inoue fight of the year, but I'd give Crawford pound for pound number one, because they've both basically done the same thing. Two division undisputed. They've come up to different weight classes and just dominated. Like it's crazy when you think about Crawford. At when he did 140 and became undisputed, his welterweight run, he looked much more dominant than his junior welterweight run, which is insane. Like the guy moved up and somehow he's knocking everyone out. So that's insane from him. So that's why for me, he's pound for pound number one. But fight of the year, I'd have to give to Inoue. But outside of those two, who would you say should get an honorable mention for fight of the year? They don't get it, but they're someone that's done a lot of work, and because of them two, they won't get recognized for that work that they put in. I'll come to you first, Chris.
Oh, that's a pretty tough one. Now that I think about it,
you first. I can't lie.
It's actually really tough now that I think about it, because I feel like those achievements have been so high. It's been hard to really see who else has come close. I think my honorable mention will probably go to Devin Haney. I think so Haney's fought, is it once or twice this year?
Twice, yeah.
Who did he fight before Prograde?
Loma.
There we go.
Controversial decision there.
There we go. So he fought. I completely forgot that Loma was this year. But the thing is, the reason I'd put him there definitely as like a third place position is because number one, he took the Loma fight, which is something most guys in the division wouldn't do. Do you know what I mean? And I feel like because he's taken that fight, and people like to say it was controversial and whatnot, the fight was extremely competitive.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? The fight was extremely competitive. And I feel like as a result of that fight, people are more willing to actually fight Loma now because of Devin Haney. But yeah, he's fought Loma. Call it controversial all you like, but I thought it was a very close fight. I did think it was a close fight. He got the decision and he didn't rest on his laurels. He moved up and he went to go fight Regis, who, let's not forget, Regis is not a bum. Regis is a decent fighter. We've seen him go toe-to-toe with Josh Taylor in a fight where I actually thought he won. The guy hits hard and he's very tricky. He throws very unorthodox punches. And he wiped the floor of him. He made him look like a nobody. Do you know what I mean? And I feel like that's important for Devin because he's come from a position where people have just clowned his power. They said he's not a good boxer. He runs around the ring. He's chinny, all of this stuff. So to put up a performance like that after moving up a weight division, for me, speaks volumes. So hopefully he's putting himself in a position where he can't just be completely small boyed by Tank. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
He's separated himself from Shakur, who hasn't really got a name that people recognize. Yeah, for me, it's Devin. It's for sure, it's Devin.
Adam?
Yeah, so I have to totally agree. When you look at his actual accomplishments that he's accomplished over the year as well, to defend all four belts against Loma, and then to move up and win in that fashion convincingly as well. It's actually a lot closer to Inoue and Crawford than I initially thought. And thinking about it now, I think he definitely deserves the honourable mention. No questions asked. Easy, yeah. Devin Haney.
Perfectly well said. And I agree with you. I think Haney's an honourable mention. There's two other guys that I'm going to say. I know it's a bit cheating, but two other guys I think deserve an honourable mention. The first guy I'm going to mention is, like Ranch Dingus said, Benavidez. I feel like just because he hasn't won a world title doesn't take away what he's done this year. This year, he's taken on guys that he didn't need to take on, but they were tough. On paper, they were tough fighters that no one really wanted to fight. And he's been doing it because he wants to prove to Canelo, look, if you don't want to fight me, cool, I'm going to prove to everyone that you have to fight me, or else you're the one that's running because I'm fighting all the other guys. And the fact that he took on Caleb Plant, it was a tough fight, that Caleb Plant fight initially, but then as it went down the sort of round, he battered him. He really beat up. And I think the referee was Kenny Bayless. And he retires. A good riddance. I don't like him.
Good
riddance. He's retired recently. Good riddance because
but he might become a judge.
Okay, that's true. Yeah, that is true.
Oh, is he going to become a judge?
He's contemplating it.
So the corruption's still going to be running deep.
Yeah. The problem with him is, especially in that fight, was a lot of the times Benavidez does his best work, especially on the inside when he's on the clinch, because he's the bigger guy. He knows what to do and how to work. And he was breaking that fight up again and again. He was letting Plant clinch. And I think it would have been a knockout win for Benavidez if it wasn't Kenny Bayless as the referee. But he still put in a great performance and really battered Plant. Even Canelo did, battered him and beat him up, but that was also another battering. And then to go on, and he didn't have to fight these guys. He had his he's got his WBC interim. He does not need to fight anyone tough. And then he took on Demetrius Andrade, and he battered him.
Yeah.
What he did to Andrade, that is statement. That is like, I don't care who's in front of me, I'm gonna batter them. And that was when I realized, I was like, you know what, this guy he can lose to Canelo, but he can definitely give Canelo a big run for his money, especially it'll be the most competitive fight that he gets. So he gets my fight of the year mention because he doesn't have a belt, but he still acted like a champion. He fought twice this year, so I have to give credit to him. And the other guy is Bam Rodriguez. What Bam did this year was insane. Coming down a weight class from his 115 to 112, winning the title, and he didn't look great. That's fair. This is why he gets an honorable mention, and he's not really that high up. I think Haney's and Benavidez is just a bit higher than him. But what he did to Sonny Edwards, people dropped him before, but no one's done to Sonny Edwards what he did to Sonny Edwards. That's a really good statement performance that he put in. And to unify the division, especially when you only just entered it, like literally his two fights this year, one was for the WBO, won it, and then the other one was for the IBF flyweight. Brilliant. Like, I have to give him his credit for that. So those are the guys that I think deserve their also honorable mention for fight of the year. If Inoue and Crawford didn't exist, they would be in the running for it. So
definitely, yeah. No,
and it just shows you in it, like the fact that we can talk about this many fighters when it comes to fight of the year, it shows you how many fighters actually stepped up this year and really wanted it. So
and just how good the year's been for boxing overall. I mean, from what you said in the start, I couldn't dispute anything. Off the top of the head, it's been the best year of boxing, off the top of my head, possibly that I've ever really watched like that. So yeah.
Right, so from Fighter of the Year, we move on to the next award. So our first award, Fighter of the Year, goes to Inoue and Bud. I think they both can sort of share that award, because I think everyone, what you would find is the debate is between them two. I think we can find it in ourselves to give it to both of them. They've done that before. The Ring magazine, I know they did that before with Teofimo and Tyson Fury, so they can do it with Bud and Inoue. But the next award that we come on to is Fight of the Year. Which fight this year that you thought was the best fight that you've watched this year? I'll go into my one first. I think a lot of factors come into fight of the year. It's, is it a cinematic type of fight, where it's back and forth, really competitive? What are the stakes for that fight? And also, how high level was that fight as well? So all of these factors kind of come into play. And with all these factors into play, I just think Haney versus Lomachenko was my fight of the year. Just in terms of how high level it was between the two operators, but then also how close it was and how back and forth it really was. Like, it was so close that it's one of those fights like Triple G Canelo 2. You can't really argue. You can argue either way. And you look at how close that fight was, again, how high level it was. This was again on that same level. And I think it was the fight for Haney for me that I looked at him and I went, you know what? He's really solid. Like, even if you didn't think he won, if you think he lost, the fact that he was able to do that with that version of Lomachenko is a very good performance of what he put in. So for me, that has to be fight of the year. Adam, what is your fight of the year?
So you've just said everything I wanted to, really. My fight of the year is the same, Haney Lomachenko. Taking in the fact it was one of those cinematic fights where it was just back and forth. These guys are both going toe to toe at the highest level of boxing possible. It was such a high level fight. And as you said, it's one of those fights which could have gone either way. I do understand that a lot of the boxing world kind of saw it. We were kind of edging more to Lomachenko's side with that fight, only because he looked very good in flurries. But Haney was just consistent throughout the whole 12 rounds, and he was snatching a lot of the rounds as well. So I think for me, it's a no-brainer. That was the highest level fight out of all of them. It had absolutely everything, and that goes as my fight of the year.
Chris, your fight of the year?
Well, I'm gonna throw a spanner in the works here. So I'm actually gonna go for Tyson Fury versus Ngannou. And obviously, from a technical perspective, it wasn't the best of fights, but the spectacle, the drama, everything about it as kind of like a piece of entertainment. It was really thrilling, and we didn't expect it to be as entertaining as it was, or as competitive as it actually was. I feel the knockdown to Tyson Fury spoke volumes, because it called into question so many different things. So the long term impact of that knockdown is just it's built up a kind of a life of its own. So going from the fact that now MMA fighters think they've got a great chance against boxers, you've got people calling into question Tyson Fury's skills and his abilities. Calling into question how good Ngannou could have been if he competed as a boxer from the get-go, or even how good he still can be. People putting him in fantasy matchups, thinking who can actually beat Ngannou in the heavyweight division. So yeah, for me, that was definitely great entertainment, just from a viewer's perspective. From a more technical perspective, I have to agree with you guys. Haney versus Lomachenko, really, really great work. You see how talented naturally Devin Haney is. You see his ability to kind of keep his head, even in the fact that Loma's so technical. He just gets to people. He breaks them mentally, and you could see he was able to kind of keep himself to himself and keep his thoughts gathered. Bill did a great job in the corner. He had great body work. Loma is Loma. Do you know what I mean? Loma is going to do what Loma does. Matrix boxing, his flurries, his footwork. But they managed to keep it competitive. Didn't like the response from Loma crying afterwards, and all of that nonsense he does when he loses. But ultimately, the fight itself, from a technical perspective, was amazing.
Yeah, perfectly well said. And the thing about the Fury and Ghana one is like, it was weird because you saw the knockdown happen, and it was like you're watching. It was like a fever dream. It was like a dream. Like you didn't know it was real.
Yeah,
it felt scripted.
Yeah,
yeah,
It felt scripted. I actually thought, did he just go down on purpose? Like, did he really? Is this just to make the whole thing look like it's worth our money? I don't know. It wasn't. We know it wasn't, but
yeah.
at the time, it's hard not to think that, for sure.
Yeah.
And then the rest of the fight, you saw that he couldn't get a foothold in the fight properly like he normally does. Like nothing was just working for him. So it's just so weird to see that you've got this guy who is meant to be one of the best heavyweights of this era just somehow fall apart in this stage. And it wasn't like he fell apart to like an Usyk, for example. He fell apart to a debutant boxer. Again, a guy who never really boxed in his life before. And it just all fell apart. It was so weird to watch that whole event just unfold the way it did. That is a good span in the works that you threw there. One honorable mention that I'm going to give is Cordina versus Rakhimov. I thought that fight was one of the best British title fights that we ever had on British soil for this year, because that was real back and forth. Like Cordina dropped him, I think, early on, and then Rakhimov was just hell with his pressure, just kept pressuring Cordina. He was losing the fight, but he just made it so good. And I remember that fight, everyone was watching it and everyone was surprised in terms of the technical ability and the quality that fight delivered. Another one that I think will definitely go under the radar is Robeisy Ramirez versus Rafael Espinoza. It was on the same time as Haney Prograis. So a lot of people obviously wouldn't have watched it because they watched Haney Prograis. But if you watched Ramirez Espinoza, it's contender definitely for upset of the year because Espinoza wasn't meant to win that. But Espinoza is 6 foot, I think he's 6'3", and he's fighting at featherweight. And obviously Robeisy Ramirez double Olympic gold medalist. He's meant to be the next guy at featherweight. You know, the guy that's meant to challenge Inoue once he comes up. But he, you know, Robisi couldn't get his foot in the fight, and he was losing all the rounds. And then he dropped Espinoza, but then Espinoza ended up dropping him in the later rounds and clawed it back. And it was a real back and forth in terms of, you know, when we talk about cinema type fights where two guys get dropped and it's like real back and forth thing, like, oh, I don't know. It's one of those fights that it's one of those fights in 2023 that you want to see again. That I wouldn't mind seeing the rematch because it was so entertaining. You did miss that fight and you didn't watch it. Anyone watching, if you didn't watch that fight, Romero Espinoza, I watched that because that is one of a very good fight just to watch, even from a casual perspective, because the entertainment that goes on. Any potential fights there that you think we might have missed in terms of honorable mentions, Adam?
Do you know what? Even though it didn't go the distance, I do think, and maybe it's because I was quite invested in the fight itself, but the first big fight of the year, Beterbiev versus Anthony Yarde, I thought was a very, very good fight. It had a lot of question marks arise during the fight where Yarde looked very competitive and very good in some spells, and we were thinking, is Beterbiev slowing down, this and that? But I do think the pressure of Beterbiev was just compounding throughout the rounds, and he's a type of fighter where the pressure starts to break a fighter down slowly. Come 7th, 8th, he's still going, and the pressure's kind of got to the next fighter, and that's where he was able to really stamp down his authority in the fight. But I thought leading up to the KO finish, that was a very good back and forth. Definitely, yeah.
There was a fight that I went out to watch live, and it was like, I think, like I said to my boy when we left, I was like, you know, that's probably, there's not going to be a fight that we go to live that's probably better than watching that fight.
Yeah.
And it was the perfect mesh of two guys, because it was two guys that wanted to stand in the center and trade, but also a lot of the shots that Yarde was taking, I felt like if it was someone else, they would have got knocked out clean.
Yeah, Yarde is such a game fighter. I think he gets a lot of hate unnecessarily. But I definitely think he's someone that could fight at that top level. I don't think he's the finished product in where he could go on to get world titles. Maybe he could prove me wrong. I hope he does. But he's definitely good enough to give anyone in that division a good account in terms of fights.
Because and that's what comes into question. Like, a lot of people think, oh, maybe Beterbiev slowing down, or like you just said, but a lot of the shots that he landed early on, I'm thinking, you know, if anyone else if that lands on anyone else and that early in the fight, it wouldn't have been as competitive, because either they would have been knocked out or they would have showed up straight away.
Yeah,
like they wouldn't have you know, gone to the fire the way Anthony Yarde was going to the fire a lot of the times. Like, there was one shot I remember in the 4th round, Beterbiev landed this overhand right as Yarde came into the corner. It really caught him straight on his face. I don't know where it was exactly. You hear it was like a gunshot. You hear it and you're like, how is this guy, forget about going down and thing, how's the guy's not wobbled at all? Like, he showed up, because obviously, like, when you get hit by that, you're stunned and it really did hurt you. But how he just took that, I was like, that he made that fight more competitive than it should have been. Ranch says Yarde is unlucky because we just have 2 all-timers at the top. If Yarde was a cruiserweight, he'd have one. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, definitely. I think I agree with that. Just came at a wrong time.
There've been worse boxers that have become world champion than Anthony Yarde.
100%.
Way worse boxers. So.
Yeah,
he's a really tough customer, Yarde.
Yeah,
very.
Yeah, he's just unlucky that he lives in a time where Beterbiev and both Bivol are the champions, and then Kovalev was also a champion when he was
beforehand.
So it is.
And to be honest, if he fought Kovalev at the right time, so maybe he'd had a bit more experience, might be a different fight.
Maybe,
yeah, very close fight.
Definitely, it was inexperience that ended up losing him the fight in Russia.
Yeah. And I think in this fight it was just Beterbiev is just different.
I think Beterbiev is an all-time great at that weight. So.
Yeah, it just got to a point where Beterbiev imposed himself on the fight, and it was just downhill from there.
Yeah. So that's perfect. I mean, we had so many fights we just talked about in terms of fight of the year. Again, another award that just shows you how good this year's been. So the next award is knockout of the year. What did we think was the best, or your not necessarily the best, but it's your favorite knockout that you thought that's my favorite of the year. I'll start off. Junto Nakatani versus Andrew Maloney. That was insane. I mean, what a perfect! It was on the Haney Lomachenko, so fight of the year undercard. It's in I think it was in Vegas, Haney Lomachenko, and it was perfect because Junto's Japanese, he's a champion, and everyone that's a boxing purist knows about Junto because he's a young kid, but I think he's a 3-weight world champion now, or 2-weight, and we've been gassing him for quite some time, and then this is the perfect fight for him because you go for another world title and it's on this big undercard. He was battering Maloney the whole fight, but then just in that last round, the 11th round, he sets up his jab hand just to measure the distance and lands a huge overhand right. And then when you listen to the replays, like you listen to they have the ringside cameras and everything, it sounds like a shotgun. How Maloney is okay is insane to me because he got blasted out of there properly. That was a proper scary knockout because when he went down, his head hit the canvas, and it was scary to see. But it just showed you the power that Nakatani had. And when I watched that, even the commentary itself and everything, it was an insane knockout to watch. Chris, what was your knockout of the year?
So I'm gonna go with a bit of recency bias here. Jai Opetaia. That was a knockout to remember for sure. And with a big audience watching. For me, it wasn't even the knockout itself because I feel like we all knew he was going to stop Ellis Zorro. Credit to Ellis Zorro for taking the fight, but we all knew that there was levels. But it's the fact that he's hit him so hard into the ropes, and it's the way he's standing over him. That for me, it was almost like, right, even if you've got the ability to stand up, do you want to stand up? And you could see it in Zorro's face. He was not only just defeated by the punch itself, but just by Opetaia standing over him menacingly. Like he had no way he was going to get up. But yeah, the execution, the quickness of the knockout itself, yeah, it said a lot. There's probably been a few others that I will probably overlook. AJ's Hellenius knockout was really good.
Yeah.
Credit to him. I feel like it was the only good thing in the fight, to be honest.
Yeah.
But it was a hell of a right hand he's caught him with there for sure.
Yeah, that's perfect. Yeah. Adam, what is your knockout of the year?
So it was a toss-off between the two knockouts mentioned.
Pause, man.
So yeah, well, it's either one of those, to be honest. And to kind of go back at Chris, I don't think Zorro had a clue Opetaia was standing over him, to be honest. He was out of it, man, and that it was just the knockout first round statement he made, the standing over him afterwards, the actual event itself, like how big the event was. I think everything with that knockout kind of sums it up, and I'll give it to Opetaia recency bias. Just a bit, yeah.
Yeah, that's fair. One knockout that I think gets overlooked, but it's because it's on the platform that it's on. I don't know if you lot watched it. Samuel Antwi over Mason Cartwright, where he punches him because it's on the Wasserman card. He punches him, and then Mason just it was a left hook that he punched him, and Mason just froze. Like he was, it was one though where he just froze. He didn't move, and then obviously Antwi punched him again and dropped him. It was just scary to see Mason just sort of freeze because it was like they're in the I'll send it to you in the group chat. They're in the middle of like scrapping, and then Samuel just he just stops, and you're like, why does he stop? But it's because he obviously got caught with a punch, and his brain just shut off. It's like, you remember, when Terry Harper got stopped by Alicia Baumgartner, like
Yeah.
that, like
Yeah. He
he just
froze.
froze. I think another one that I'm overlooking is also Zhang and Joyce, the second one.
That's a very good shout. Yeah.
That's a really good shot.
And Raj just said it. I got Zhang on Joyce to end this face tanking defense that guy was doing. Yeah. That was insane. That he throws the left. It was a throwaway left to land that right hook, because when he threw that left, Joyce was coming back with his right and just completely open.
Hit him up perfectly. Yeah.
Flattened
Such a
him.
well executed. Yeah, that definitely deserves a shout. Yeah, top 3.
Yeah.
I mean,
There's
there are probably so many.
I literally just pulled it up. Mendoza.
Yeah.
Fundura.
I was going to talk about that in one of the other
Categories.
Yeah, but that, especially when you look at the context of that knockout as well, because he was losing every single round, and it was literally that one punch brought him the fight, and it just and that's what I love about those type of knockouts is this is what shows you the difference between boxing and football and any other sport. Like in football, if a team is upset by, like, let's say Man U's playing or Man City's playing like League One team Stockport,
I'm glad
over 90 minutes, huh?
I'm glad you changed the team, because Man U losing isn't an upset anymore. But,
God.
He can't even fight back.
Not at all.
No, but let's say Man City plays Stockport. You can see over the 90 minutes that Stockport are playing better. But in boxing, you don't have to be better for the whole duration. It's just that 1 second, bang, and one. Yeah. So that's what I love about these type of knockouts, is when you just take it away from the guy.
Yeah.
So that is a good shout, especially Fundura and Mendoza. All right. So I mean, with knockout of the year, the one thing about the knockout of the year, every year with boxing, you always get good knockouts. Like it's just a statistical probability that you're always going to get a great knockout every single year. So that was good. Okay, I'm going to come on to the next topic, which I think Chris is going to enjoy. Trainer of the year. So Chris, let me take it away. Let me let you take this away. Who is your trainer of the year this year, especially after last year's happenings?
The trainer of the year, like every single year, Derek James. There's only one trainer of the year. There's only one trainer of the year that ever will be, and that's Derek James. You gotta give it to Bomac. You've got to give it to Bomac. His work with Bud obviously is very clear and obvious for everyone to see. And he literally dethroned the previous trainer of the year. So his work with Eubank, even though people are saying it's short, he did great work with Eubank. Also, he's got wins with Keyshawn Davis, literally straight out of prison, UK prison. For me, it's very clear cut that it's Derek James. Probably had the ability to showcase. What was that?
You mean Bomac?
Oh, there's only one trainer of the year. Bomac. It's very obvious it's Bomac. I think the Spence Crawford fight for me just kind of highlighted how good of a trainer he is. The things you were saying leading up, the way he explained how they managed to take away the best attributes of Errol Spence, it just all really made sense, and he had the fighter to be able to prove he knew how to deal with Errol Spence. So for me, it was it's clear cut that it's Bomac trainer of the year.
Adam, yours?
Yeah, so Chris has basically touched on everything I wanted to say. Short and sweet from me, Bomac. That's it.
Yeah, I agree with the two of you. I think the other guys that I just give a sort of honorable mention to is the trainers of the fighters of the year that we were talking about. So obviously Inoue's father, Shingo Inoue, I think you've got to give him his props for getting Inoue. Also getting his younger brother, his younger son also as a champion. Bill Haney, I think you've got to give him his credit for what he's done with Devin Haney, and then also you've got to give credit to Jose Benavidez Sr. for what he's done with David Benavidez. Okay, he's lost with obviously Junior, but Junior was never that good anyway, so we're not going to really dwell on that. But with what he done with David, so yeah. But I agree with you. I think it should be unanimous across the board that Bomac is probably the best trainer. You just hope that he doesn't fall into the trainer of the year curse that typically follows people when they have trainer of the year, like when Eddie Reynoso won it after Canelo's undisputed run. Most of his fighters started losing. Oscar Valdez got schooled by Stevenson. Canelo got schooled by Bivol. Julio Cesar Martinez got schooled by Chocolatito. So, and then the same thing with Derrick James. He won it that year, and then Jamal Charlo had one of the worst losses in his career. Errol Spence has one of the worst losses in his career. Frank Martin, arguably, won a very close fight against a fighter that shouldn't have been on his level. If we're talking about, how he was as a prospect. So that's something that we have to now look into next year with Bomac, is can he break the curse next year? He's gonna have a big year though, so we'll have to see. But that's brilliant. Yeah, Bomac, he takes the cake, literally, because
yeah.
He's dumb though. He is so dumb. The fact that he did what he did and got he had the whole prison thing in the UK is so stupid. It was such a
luckily we're not talking about man of the year, because he does not get that.
He's like the fact that you had this year, how good it was, and then you do that, it's just insane. But we've seen so many people, especially just in not just in boxing, but so many people, like, they've got the world in their hands, they've got that opportunity where now they're there and then they just screw it up somehow. So right, so moving on to performance of the year. So before I do that, Chris Welch says, just subbed, came on my recommendations, big boxing fan myself. Thank you, Chris. Thank you for the
Chris.
sub.
Thanks for tuning in.
So performance of the year, I mean, for me there's only one answer, and I think all of you are going to agree with it. It has to be Crawford versus Spence, and I just want to get into it a bit, because for me, this was such a great week. That was such a great week to watch, because obviously on Tuesday you had Inoue beating Fulton, you had all of that happening. But then the fight week of just Spence Crawford, we're just talking about that fight. The way these men were talking in the press conference, like Spence was like, "Get active. We get active around here." And then and when you looked at the weigh-ins, you could kind of tell in your head, like everyone could tell these guys are in shape. Like they look like they were in the best shape. They had the best camp of their lives. They both looked like they were on shape, and in my head I was thinking, we're gonna have a war. So and then on paper, I think most of us were assuming, like, I had Crawford winning. I don't know about you guys. Did you have Crawford winning?
Yeah,
but close. It was a close fight in our eyes, in terms of we had Crawford winning, but we thought that he was gonna have to come through a certain
I think I actually predicted him to stop him late. So I think
but did you think it would be decisive?
But I thought he would be slightly down on the cards going into the middle rounds for sure.
Yeah. So, and the fact that we come into the fight night and he just steps in and he dropped him in the second round, right? Yeah, it was the second round.
Yeah.
Like first round, a bit tentative, and they're both doing their thing, and then second round, and then just ups the pace from the second round, and it wasn't a competition. It was insane. I was in Manchester at the time with my boys watching, because we were going about Manchester, going Peak District, all of that. So we were watching from a hotel. So obviously you got those bigger screens in it. It looks better. Most of my boys aren't boxing casuals, so I had to kind of convince them, like, yo, if I'm coming with you lot on this date, we're gonna have to watch it in the hotel. So they're like, cool, yeah, whatever. So they stayed up and they watched it. They're not casuals. They don't know who Crawford or Spence are. They watched that and they're like, you know what, Crawford is sick. They were like, the fact that casuals can look at that performance and they go, yeah, that guy is sick, and they really love that performance. For me, just for them, they don't understand the context. When you take the context, the fact that this is meant to be such a close fight
for all the belts, couple of years brewing, like that, so many pieces that were put in place leading up to that performance, and for Crawford to perform in that way, it's like, I'm surprised we're even having a discussion about this. Like, it is so far ahead the best performance of the year for me, and probably the best performance I've seen in a while. Not just this year. It had absolutely everything. I can't remember such a 50-50 fight where one of the fighters was just so dominant to the point that
Yeah.
people don't even want to see a rematch.
No.
Yeah.
That was the one thing I remember when we were talking about the fight. We were happy that there was a two-way rematch clause because obviously we thought it was going to be a good fight on paper, so that you warrant a rematch. That what he just did there, insane. Just to say, nope, we're not having a rematch.
Nobody wants to see it.
Yeah,
Nobody
no one.
wants to do it. Yeah.
And also, you take into context the fact that for many years, PBC basically been acting like Crawford didn't exist. Like I remember that there was that graphic where they had Pacquiao, Spence, and then Thurman or something, and they didn't have Crawford in that graphic of the champions at welterweight. Like they were really acting like Crawford didn't exist. But then once he did step across and come to the other side of the street, the fact that he just bullied him and battered him, it was just insane. Like performance-wise, it like I said, it's one of those performances you're going to be talking like boxing purists, everyone, they're going to be telling their children, their grandchildren about it. Like that was one of the best fighters from my era, and that was one of the fights I think that established Crawford as a guy that we can say he's an all-time great. Like, that was the fight.
Most definitely. Yeah.
Chris, your thoughts on that performance? Like anything that I haven't missed?
Yeah, no, I think you've pretty much said it all. We watched it, so me and Adam were watching it together, a couple others.
Yeah.
And I think from minute one, I was like, yep, Crawford's got this. He just looks so composed. He looks so focused, so calculated. Every movement he made in the ring had purpose. Yeah, it was an amazing fight, honestly. And I think it's a performance that no one will ever forget. No real boxing fan is ever going to forget. He was yeah, he was a different level. It was a different level. He made Spence look like an amateur. So boy, it doesn't get much better than that for me.
Yeah, and there's only a few fights in boxing where I feel like it can change the dynamics of our group chat. Like obviously AJ Ruiz I wasn't there at that time, but that obviously changed the dynamics of the group chat when AJ lost.
Yeah.
I don't think a fight since then really had. Maybe Fury Wilder, I'd say, probably changed.
Yeah.
And then this fight changed the dynamics of the group chat because you saw obviously the Spence super fans, Dr. Leroy and Sams, just they didn't really have an answer for what they just saw. They were confident, super confident going into that fight, and then after that fight, it was just like they just don't know what happened. It was like it's like a truck hit them.
Yeah. As in, like, it was crazy because it wasn't one of those fights where you can try and look for an excuse or you can try and figure out like, did the judges should have done this? He was using his elbow, he was doing this illegally. Nothing like that. One guy was better than the other, and it was clear. It was clear cut who the better fighter was and who the better fighter has been. It didn't even feel like one of those fights where, for me, you look at like AJ versus Wilder, and a lot of people are going to say now, if they fought in their primes, Wilder would have won, or do you know, things like that.
Yeah.
Let's say, for example, if Fury loses now, they'll say the same thing. But honestly, for me, it's like it showed no matter when it happened, prime for prime, whatever weight division, everyone is always going to pick Crawford to win that fight just because of that performance there. It was so dominant, so one-sided. Yeah. I don't think there's any arguing.
Yeah. It's one of those fights where I was just like, it just, the whole thing just felt like a fever dream to me. Like I just couldn't believe, like when I was watching it and I saw him drop Crawford in the second round, I was just so confused. Like I was expecting Crawford to win, and I've always said on the eye test, when you look at both of them, Crawford is the better fighter. You can see that he's got the better IQ and he's got a better arsenal. But but Spence is a very solid fighter. He can make this very tough for him. Just seeing what he did there, I was just so shocked. I was like, like, is this real? It was, again, it's one of those fights where like, is this real? Is this actually happening? Like this guy actually dominating him and looking the way he did. So it's just insane. Any special shout outs that I think we're missing? I think the only one I can think of off the top of my head is probably Inoue and Fulton, just because that one, Oh no. Before I move on to Inoue Fulton, one thing I missed. One thing I missed was especially that what makes that performance even more colder was when he knocked down Spence. I think it was for the second time in the 7th round. He went and he turned to Jamal Charlo. And he was like,
Yeah.
he started talking mad to him.
Yeah.
He looked, I can't lie, he looked like a nitty when he was talking to him. Like he looked off his head.
He was talking crud. Well, while the other guy was still gathering himself. He was, that was one of my favorite moments of.
Yeah.
100%.
And then you have Charlo trying to, big himself up in front of who was it?
Harden. James Harden.
James Harden.
Yeah.
And Harden's just looking at him like, "Are you sure, bro?"
Exactly. Yeah.
I got Canelo next. He's nothing to. I've done this already. I got Canelo next.
I did this. I was like, yeah, or whatever, man.
and then he goes and does that performance against Canelo. So, boy.
I'm going to talk about Inoue Fulton, but there's a link between those two that I'm going to get onto after. So the special shout also have to go to Inoue Fulton because again, a fight that on paper meant to be 50-50, meant to be a tough fight for Inoue, his 4th weight class. Like this is okay. We're coming to the limits of what you're meant to be. Completely dominated Fulton, showboated like Crawford did. In the 2nd round, told him, "Come on, hit me on the chin. You're not getting near me." Completely dominated him, and then the knockout was brutal, especially that left hook that he landed. Like was he jabbed him and then hit the right hand, and then I felt like Fulton should have gone down, but he didn't. He brought himself back up and then he hit him with that left hook, and that was really it for Fulton. The link between those two fights was in those performances. I felt like there was no ceiling on both fighters. Like I genuinely felt like Crawford could have gone in December, fought Jamal Charlo for his undisputed titles, and he probably would have beaten him. And the same thing with Inoue. I thought Inoue could have gone on to featherweight after that fight, and I still think that he can go up to that featherweight and completely dominate the featherweights there. Like I feel like the ceiling is yet to be reached for these lot, and that's why those two, I think, obviously Crawford is the performance of the year, but you have to give it to the credit of both of them for those performances they put on. Like we're looking at generational fighters between them two. So that's my take. Any other performance that I think that I'm missing that you thought really good performance that should get a special shout?
I mean, honorable mentions just off the top of the head. I think Haney against Prograis, maybe because Prograis wasn't started slowing down, etc. But it was a fighter that's coming up and completely dominated, won every single round. That off the top of my head.
And he dropped him.
Yeah, and he dropped him as well. Yeah. So you kind of proved the doubters wrong in that he didn't have any power and whatnot. I still think that's the case, but for him to come up and drop the champion, it was a big statement from Haney, most definitely. I think in terms of dominant performances as well, bit of recency bias, and it wasn't a performance that led to any titles or anything, but Anthony Joshua versus Otto Wallen looked very impressive at the heavyweight division. Opataya versus Thompson, very dominant performance, not against the highest level fighter, but it was a performance that kind of put him on everyone's radar as well. Those are just a few to name off the top of the head.
I also think Tio versus Taylor.
Yeah, Tio versus Taylor. Yeah, that's
Taylor.
That was a very, very dominant performance.
Again, that was also with context because everyone thought Tio was just going to have another mental breakdown in that fight, and the fact that he just did that to even if you think Cattrall won, and I think Cattrall won.
Yeah,
Cattrall wasn't doing that to Taylor, what Teofimo did.
No.
And that's put Tio back into sort of everyone's books where they're like, you know what, he could probably beat most guys in and around those divisions. So
100%. Tio on his day has absolutely everything. He has the athleticism, the technique, the IQ, punch selection. Like he has it all.
Yeah, perfect. Chris says, performance of the year can only be Crawford masterclass, as we said on Spence. I said Crawford stopped Spence, but didn't expect him to dominate that. Yeah, I don't think anyone predicted.
I don't think anyone. Yeah,
unless you're part of the Crawford camp, no one predicted Crawford to dominate the way he did.
No.
So yeah, that's it. I mean, that is one of the not just performance of the years, but I think it could go down as performance of the decade. The decade's still young, but it's up there.
I don't think people realize. I think looking back on it, people aren't going to realize the context going into that fight and how Errol Spence was perceived.
Yeah.
Going into that fight, he was perceived as the bigger fighter. He was perceived as the stronger fighter. People didn't think he was going to be able to. Crawford was going to be able to deal with his body work. People thought his jab was too much for him. But those guys had a completely different plan and completely different idea from what everyone else thought. Even down to the fact that we knew that Spence hadn't fought many southpaws, right? But nobody thought he was going to fight southpaw pretty much the entire fight. Do you know what I mean? No one predicted that. We thought, he's going to start off orthodox, work his way in, switch in between. When things get a bit tricky, all sorts, none of that. He beat the brakes off Spence. He made him look sluggish. He made him look slow. Before the fight, people weren't really calling into question his car accident. They weren't calling into question his lifestyle. And that, for me, just goes to show how dominant Crawford looked in there with him when people were having to pull out all of these different excuses and explanations. He looked high, he looked drugged, all of this. Like,
they even have that they even had that neurologist give that rubbish testimony. Remember that was that video? Like, my wife was watching Spence come out, and he just showed all the signs of a concussion and all of that.
I mean, at the end of the day, he came into the ring as big fish. He was the shark, and he left the sardine. So he is what he is, man.
Made Spence look like a journeyman. Yeah, but I don't know about your obs. I don't know about your profile picture, because that guy's looking a bit shaky, innit?
He really did make Spence look like a journeyman at times in that fight. He just looked slow. He didn't respect Spence's power. We saw that. He didn't respect Spence's power.
Aegis Kavaliauskas had it was a tougher opponent than Spence. The Mean Machine, much more tougher for Crawford than Spence was.
Yeah. I mean, the one thing about Spence in that fight was he just looked so one-dimensional. There was no plan B. It was just plan A, and there was no real changes
It was just trainer of the year in the corner, just shadow boxing. Like, you gotta get on it, got in him, and he's just shadow boxing, like just slipping and
move around him. Don't stand in front of him. Move around him. It's like, bro, you're rubbish, man. You're a rubbish trainer.
Oh man.
Ron said the scary thing was Porter telling everyone that Spence hit harder. I think Spence probably does hit harder, like thudding wise, but I think Crawford's is.
That's exactly what he said.
Yeah, thudding wise.
That's exactly what Porter said. He said Spencer's got more thudding power, like more like it's like sheer brute force.
Yeah.
But he said Crawford's power is like it's like a whip.
Yeah.
More that snapping power.
Like,
I think another thing is the more that fight got delayed, the more Crawford's had a chance to really acclimatize to that weight. Like he's natural at that weight right now, and with that comes power at that weight as well, I believe. So, yeah.
One thing about Porter is that I'm not 100%, but I feel like he changed his prediction after the fight. I feel like he was leaning towards Spence initially, and then he's made it out like
he Crawford.
Knew that
he's American.
I'm not sure, but I remember going into the fight. I was watching old prediction videos, and you get a feeling through like what everyone is saying. But I remember thinking that this guy thinks Spence is gonna win.
Yeah.
He never came out with a prediction. I remember that, but he was saying things that made me think, this guy might win. But
the funny thing is Spence hit Bud with a shot or two, Ron says this, and they did nothing. Yeah, because Bud's also, you have to remember, Bud's also sparred like heavy guys as well in his career. Like, I know he sparred Carlos Adames, and that guy's a middleweight. That guy cuts down to middleweight. He's sparred heavy punches. So it's not that. It's also the timing that you have to get used to. And I don't think Spence was just used to a guy as accurate and as quick as Terence Crawford.
Yeah, he was just so sharp. Like, yeah.
Ob says I need to change it, his profile picture. But before we move on, dummy of the year goes to the Charlo brothers because the way their stock has plummeted this year is insane. At the start of the year, I was backing them. I was saying, you know what, yeah, Jamel Charlo needs to get his credit because I think he's a top pound for pound level fighter because of what he did at like middleweight. And I think you can't obviously take that away from him. But how he showed up against Canelo was just ruined all his stock because you're just there for a payday. You're there to survive and not win. And then obviously all the legal issues that he's had outside, or being a piece of crap that he is. And then obviously his brother as well being a piece of crap in the way and getting slapped by Caleb Plant, not doing anything about it, coming back and fighting Jose Benavidez Jr., who's not a middleweight, but just fighting him and then not making weight at the same time. There's so much stuff that they've done. He's changed it. Obviously has changed his profile picture to anyway.
Yeah, there we go. There we go.
I think that's a lot better. Yeah.
That's the picture.
Bud Mel was my dream fight, but that's dead now. Mel's not fighting again. That guy's got his money. He's not fighting again. He's content, and he needs to get.
He fought for a payday. He fought for a paycheck, and he's got it. He got it. So
no, not anymore because his paycheck's probably gonna get gone after this legal case. If he
true.
So,
He's gonna need to fight.
Yeah, those two dummies of the year, man. The way those brothers stopped is taking a hit.
Yeah. It's a shame because
he didn't even. All he had to, all Mel had to do, Mel just had to look competitive against Canelo. He didn't need to win the fight. Nobody thought really he was going to win the fight.
It's the manner in which he lost, like
the manner in which he performed, the manner in which he lost. And we say this all the time, and we look at this all the time. It's often the performances. How the performances look. We look at whether you win or lose, your stock can go up, your stock can go down,
100%.
Depending on how you actually perform. We've seen Ngannou lose his fight, and his stock is taken.
And he's come out like a winner. Yeah.
He's come out like a winner. It can happen. Things like that happen, but he just did not want to. He didn't want to try at all. He did not want to try. He looked scared the entire fight. He just wanted to survive. And then I think the worst thing, and the reason why I can't rate him at all, is that he was flexing the fact that he survived and didn't get knocked down. And he made a reference to Errol Spence speaking about how he didn't. He was how he's speaking. Like, what did he say? He said something like
he was running. He's like, "Oh, you guys made Errol look tired." Or something
you breathe. Yeah, he was breathing all crazy. Like Errol, like you're not gonna catch me looking crazy like that. Like, what the hell, man? And that's meant to be your boy.
Yeah. I'd rather he went out on his shield. If he went out like Spence, because at certain points, even though I don't agree, everyone was like, "Oh, Spence is so tough. He's a soldier. He's this. He's that." For getting that beat down, basically. I think it would have been better for Charlo for him to go out in that fashion because he was going up 2 weight divisions essentially.
Yeah, so I don't even have an issue with him surviving. Right, the issue is he didn't try the entire fight. We knew we could tell very early on that Canelo was the better boxer, was the stronger guy. We could see that like almost immediately. But you didn't try. You didn't even try to be competitive. From round 1, you're a taller fighter, you got the range. You didn't try and box. You just tried to survive the entire fight. So what's the point? We knew what he wanted. He probably went out for a night out straight after that fight.
Yeah.
He didn't. His face wasn't damaged.
No, it wasn't.
He wasn't beat and bruised, and he was kind of flexing that as well.
Yeah.
Chris says I expected Jamel to cause Canelo problems, which is probably one of his worst predictions. I kind of like everyone on paper didn't think Jamel would win, but they thought he was going to bring something different to the table that we haven't really seen with Canelo before, and he didn't.
I mean, we've seen Canelo get nullified in some instances with a very good jab and managing of distance. I mean, the perfect example would be Bivol. But there was none of that from Jamel at all. And it's not like Jamel has a bad jab or managing of distance or feet either. He's got decently good feet. He's got a good jab.
He's dropped people with that jab.
Exactly. Like he's even known for that jab, but it's like he never tried to use that jab to gain any form of authority in that fight. He was just there in survival mode from the first bell.
It seemed like, you know, when Caleb Plant fought Canelo, and then in the middle of the exchanges, he was like, oh, I'm pretty good, huh? I'm pretty good, huh? Like he was trying to get Canelo's like approval.
Yeah,
But
it was like he was fighting for approval more than
yeah, it seemed the same way because like usually Jamel, everyone knows him to be a bit aggressive in his pre-fight antics and his press conferences. Is fine because that's what gets the fire in him, and that's what made him a.
This
There was
press
nothing.
conference, he was completely different, and it's like I knew he was going to lose from the pressers alone. There was no fire in him whatsoever. It looked like someone that was just turning up to participate more than to actually go there and try conquer. He was just looking to participate, get his money paid, and that's it. So, I mean, he's made his money, fair play to him. But us as fans would have liked to see a bit more.
Yeah, me and Samson, remember we watched the weigh-ins, and from the weigh-ins, we just looked at Jamel's body. Obviously, we're not all, you know, body language experts or whatever. We can just tell sometimes. We looked at his body language. I remember we put in the group chat. We said, I can't lie, I think Jamel Charlo might get battered in this fight. Like just on that weigh-ins, I just thought, you know what, I don't think he's got anything in terms of intensity or anything like that. And that's what happened. And Ob says, I thought Mel had too much heart and pride to go out like that. He didn't have it. You don't have any heart or pride.
He was saying he's a lion. I'm a lion. This. I'm a lion. That. Yeah, man. You ain't nothing, man.
Yeah.
It's all talk, really.
Right. So because we're on Jamel Charlo, I'm going to move on to this award, and then I'll come back to the other award. So the next award is Breakthrough Fighter of the Year. So Breakthrough Fighter is basically the fighter that you think now is basically getting his flowers. He's getting rated when he wasn't before. Like he's now become one of the top fighters, and he's made that step up. So for me, off the back of the Jamel Charlo talk, I think it's Tim Tszyu, because I think before January, so he was meant to fight obviously Jamel Charlo in January, and that was set after he beat who was it? I think it was Terrell Gausha. And was it Terrell? Yeah, I think it was Terrell Gausha. And I think I was saying that Tim is a very solid fighter, but Jamel is Jamel. He's the undisputed champion. He's gonna beat him. I just think Tim's not at that level. What Tim's done since then is insane. He's not waited for, even though he's meant to get the Charlo fight for undisputed, he's not waited. He fought Tony Harrison, tough opponent to fight. Real world level light middleweight. Completely cooked him and stopped him. Then he's like, cool, again, Jamel, you're not going to fight. I'm going to have a fight in between. Fought Carlos Ocampo, who, again, not the highest level opponent, but still a decent level for a tune-up in between. Is still a decent level opponent. Cooked him inside 77 seconds, knocked him out. And then got to the point where, okay, I've fought Ocampo, I'm going to fight Charlo next and then get the undisputed shot that I deserve. Nope. Charlo went and signed to fight Canelo, which fair, okay. That's your payday. But the way you've been screwing him around, it's wrong. It's been wrong. Like the way you've been messing him around because you've been injured, so-and-so. Cool. So he said, cool, I'm going to fight Brian Mendoza because he was going to get because he got elevated after the Canelo fight because he was the interim champion. And then he fought Brian Mendoza. And remember, Mendoza was coming off that big upset win over Fundora. So Mendoza's a live dog in that fight. And he completely beat up Mendoza over 12 rounds. So for me, he's my breakthrough fight of the year because I think now everyone's kind of looking at him and going, you know what, last year we didn't think that you would beat Jamel Charlo. Now, I think a lot of people would favor him to win. And not only that, I think a lot of people are looking at him as the guy at 154, especially the fact that he's had 3 fights and 2 of them against 2 top-level light middleweights. And he hasn't looked out of place at all. He's completely beaten them up and he's done his thing. So I have to give it to Tim Tszyu, man. Like that guy, he's one of the guys that out of the, the father-son, the legendary father and the legendary son duos, I think he's the most successful one right now that I can think of out of all of them. Who is your breakthrough fight of the year, Adam?
So I do think Tim Tszyu is a very good nomination in the fact that beginning of the year, I thought the fight with Charlo would be a landslide victory. Now it's a lot more competitive and he's been really active as well. So he's going to bring that into the fight if they do have it. But my breakthrough fighter of the year, despite him winning his world title last year through his broken jaw, I do think it's Opataya for me because he's really put his name out there. Whereas most people might not have heard of him last year when he beat Bradis, coming through and demolishing Thompson in that fashion, and then obviously dealing with Zorro. The way that he's dealt with those two fighters and the fact that they are two British fighters as well, it's kind of put him on the map with like the British boxing fans, and it's really given rise to his stock. And I feel like everyone is waiting for that next Jai Opataya fight now because he's so exciting and he's on so many people's radars right now. So that's who I would give my breakthrough fighter to.
Do you know why? I was gonna just lead off what you said. So I actually have a friend who he's not a big boxing fan at all. He watches a lot of the big fights, Joshua fights, Wilder fights, but nothing else. And he messaged me and he was like, "Have you seen this guy, Jai Pataya?" And I was like, "Yeah." I said, "I just saw his knockout. It was amazing." I was like, "Yeah, really, really good knockout." This was just the other day. He said, "Yeah, he heard he fought someone with a broken jaw and won." I was like, "Yeah, he has." And I was like, "Where did you hear all about this?" It was like, "Oh yeah, after that knockout, like he saw some videos and was just watching stuff about him." And it just goes to show how much a good performance and especially a good knockout can really, really make your stock rise. And I think it's a big part of the reason why Tank is where he is now. He's got those highlight reels where people see it and people are interested, people want to know more, and just everything around that person. Knockout is just entertaining a lot of people. If Wilder had a little bit more ability, he'd be there too.
Yeah,
definitely.
Jai Opataya is a good shot, especially like same story as yours, Chris. One of my friends, I showed him Jai, and he completely got obsessed with him. And he doesn't watch boxing like that. He's like, this guy looks cold, like the way how quick he is, and then just his demeanor, everything. So that is a good shot. That Jai Opataya is a very good shot for breakthrough fighter of the year. But that's good for those two fighters that we named. I think they've had brilliant years in terms of. It shows you how well exposure is, especially if you're in the right places. Like for Tim, he's had all of his fights in Australia, but these have been American fighters. So now you're seeing Americans take more note of him as well as Australians. But Australians already knew about Tim because of his dad. With Opataya, Australians knew about Jai Opataya, but British didn't really, because when he beat Bredis, it was in Australia, and Bredis isn't that well known. But when he came to sign with Matchroom, had his fight in London, and then had his fight in Saudi Arabia on the AJ undercard, now more people are starting to take note. So exposure, like you said, is really key, especially for certain fighters. When they get that they can take it, and people start to take notice, and people will actually start to tune into him. So yeah, that's perfect. So upset of the year, what do we think is our upset of the year? So Chris, I'll start with you. What's your upset of the year?
It's a tough one, this one. And the reason I think it's tough is because there's one upset where, to me, it's not an upset, and to a lot of us, it's not an upset. But just the magnitude of the loss makes it really, really big, and that's obviously the Wilder Parker loss. I think that's a really big one. Most people did expect Wilder to kind of waltz through and just stop Parker eventually. I actually wasn't one of those people. But the only reason I wasn't as confident as I should have been was because I said the same thing about Hellenius. I remember when we had his Hellenius fight, I thought that Hellenius was going to stop. I said Hellenius is going to beat Wilder.
I was one of the few. Sorry to cut you off. I was one of the few that actually agreed with you. So when we were doing our predictions, I picked Hellenius as well.
Yeah. So I thought Hellenius would beat. I thought Hellenius would beat Wilder, and then we saw what happened. But I still looked at that fight. I tried to take things, as much information as I could from that small fight. First of all, it just looked like the shot that he hit Hellenius with, it was timed really, really well. It wasn't a big shot. He was stepping back. I just thought, this Hellenius guy is a bum. And so I tried not to take much stock into it. And I looked into things. And I remember asking questions in the group chat about Ortiz versus Wilder. was just asking loads of questions because that's one fight where he really, really got dominated and he got rocked a couple times in that fight.
Yeah, he survived.
And I was like, yeah. And I was like, look, let's take things into consideration. Let's compare Parker and Ortiz. I was like, who hits harder? Probably Parker. Parker's also much younger. Obviously, Ortiz is probably more technically sound, but you're fighting Wilder. You're not fighting someone who's a technician. You don't really need to be the best boxer in the world to outbox Deontay Wilder. And I put all those things into consideration, and I thought he might lose this fight. My only issue was I had concerns about his chin and about his heart.
Yeah.
One thing that Parker does that he still did against Wilder was fight like a nice guy. He's too much of a gentleman in the ring. We saw it. There was times where they were tied up with each other and he'd let go and then Wilder would catch him flush for just letting go because he's thinking the ref is going to break this fight up. No, you do what you need to do. You box. This is a fight. And you can see the mentality between the two guys. Even though there was a massive skill gap, the mentality difference was massive. But ultimately, I think the majority of people didn't expect, and to be honest, I was still surprised that he wasn't stopped in that fight. And it's done a lot of damage to the division, as we know.
Yeah.
So I think that has to be up there in some capacity.
Yeah, Chris Welch says, I didn't think Wilder was an upset, to be honest. I said Wilder would win, but said if Parker avoids the punch, he wins easily on points. Don't know why Wilder keeps doing this when he will get found out. And he says that Wilder's legs in the fight were like cocktail sticks.
Right.
Had to look closer to find his legs. Yeah.
Well,
what's so funny about go on, Adam.
No, well, that's the thing. I feel like with Wilder, because he's relied on that power punch so much, he's neglected his actual foundations, and it's why he's able to get overwhelmed so easily in instances, because his foundation, like his legs, do seem really weak. He's just naturally so explosive that he's able to change these fights at a flick of a switch. But we've seen how his foundations let him get bulldozed by Wilder in the by Fury in the second fight, and we see that happen again with Parker. Parker was able to apply pressure to him, although not as much pressure as I thought he would push forward. But it's just those foundations there that keep letting him down, where he's able to get overwhelmed because he doesn't seem like he has strong foundations in his legs whatsoever. And I agree. I don't think it was a upset at all. It's upset for the boxing world as a whole because it was so perfectly poised for the Wilder AJ fight to happen next. And we're all upset that it's not going to happen. That's the upset. But but it's like I thought Parker would go into the fight, dominate, but I did also think Wilder was going to be able to catch him late on and get that victory. Unfortunately, he didn't. So it's always going to be a what if with Wilder and AJ, I think. But his foundations, man, they are just not there whatsoever. And when you rely on one tool from the toolbox so often in that right hand, you do tend to neglect all of your other skill sets. And that's what I think we have with Wilder as a whole.
Yeah. That's perfect. I think that's a good upset. For me, well, like Chris said, not a big upset. The other one is the one we talked about for knockout of the year, which was Mendoza versus Fundora. Because I think everyone was kind of looking at Fundora, especially after the Lubin win. Because remember, he completely rearranged Lubin's face in that fight.
Like Lubin's face looked mad. Yeah. He was unrecognizable. That's crazy. That's how crazy it was. So.
And then he goes into this fight, and Mendoza's always been a guy that you think is solid, but you never really rated him at sort of the world level. And he was losing every single round of that fight when they were fighting. Even when they started the 7th round, he lost, I think, every single round. He wasn't in that fight, and everyone thought, well, at that point, in the 7th round, everyone kind of thought, okay, well, Fundora is like, he's going to cruise to another win again. Yeah. And he just landed that one overhand. I think it was a right or a left, I can't remember. And he just froze Fundora, and it just finished him. And that was
he froze.
and that was it. And that's why for me that's the biggest upset, because again, context, because he wasn't really given a chance in that fight. Fundora was meant to at least go and win a world title, or at least fight for a world title against like the likes of Tim Tszyu. But also the fact that he was losing he didn't have a single moment where he looked good, and then he pulled that out of the fire. So that for me is the biggest upset of the year. But to sort of go against that is that I always expected someone like Sebastian Fundora, the way he fights, I always expected him to get knocked out. Not against Mendoza, but Fundora fights like a guy that you knew eventually that knockout was coming at some point in his career, where he's going to get caught by something big, because he always likes to come in on the inside, even though he's 6'5". He wants to fight up close and in range. You just knew someone was going to knock him out bad, and that's what eventually Mendoza delivered. So
that's what makes him so exciting, isn't it? So
yeah, 6'5". He wants to. He just wants to be
come in and I mean, he was
good at that though. That's the thing. He's good at that. Like, you don't find 6'5" guys that are good at fighting inside, but he can. So let's look at the comments. So Chris was shocked by Eubank getting revenge on Smith.
Nah.
To me, that's not an upset, because that's what Eubank is meant to do to Smith, in my opinion.
Yeah.
I feel like everyone had Eubank win. The Smith win is an upset.
Yeah.
I think Smith
I think the Smith win was an upset more than Eubank getting the revenges. Like, I didn't think Smith was going to win that first fight whatsoever.
No, neither.
Yeah. I think that was more of an upset, most definitely.
But it's not a big upset to me, because I think both of them are of sort of similar caliber. So I felt like while it was an upset, it wasn't like the big upset that we were talking about. Ob says Tio Taylor was one, the manner more so, yeah.
Okay, yeah, the manner. I didn't expect it to go like that.
Yeah, completely shut out. So I agree.
And then he says Okoli CBS. I don't know.
Do you know what?
That's the other one where it's the manner of the loss.
Yeah,
I didn't expect him to get beat like that. No, not
and
like
dropped
that.
As well. Yeah,
dropped. What? It was a few times. He got dropped, like 3 times.
Yeah. And then the points deduction. I wasn't surprised by the points deduction, because you would expect that to happen because of how scrappy they look. But the dropping was a bit of a shock.
Yeah, but I think one thing about that fight was, but I don't think Okoli ever recovered completely from that first punch. That kind of changed the course of the fight. And before that punch happened, it was looking like a very easy Okoli win for me. And I do think if they were to have that rematch, Okoli would win the second time round. But
you could do,
yeah.
But the thing with CBS, especially in that fight, was CBS didn't look great, but he still won.
I don't think he ever does.
Yeah, then he doesn't. That's why he's not going to fight a guy like Opataya, because I can't lie. If they ever make Chris Billam-Smith versus Opataya, it is legalized murder.
He could get hurt, like in a bad way, I believe.
Yeah, so I don't want to see that. But I mean, I want to see it because obviously it would be a title fight, but it would be a tough fight.
To what?
So last two categories, and then we're done, and then we'll get through these one quicker. So prospect of the year, I'm going to start this off. I don't know if you lot heard of him, Abdullah Mason.
Yes,
I can't say I have to, but
he is sick, lightning fast hands.
I think he's 19. He's got the world in front of him. The fact he's 11-0. He's had 1, 2, 3, 4. He's had 5 fights this year, and the level of opponent that he's fighting for where he's at right now in his career is insane. Like he's a really good prospect. I think a lot of people aren't. Obviously, if you're British, you're not really going to know much about Abdullah Mason because he's on all the top rank cards. If you watch all the top rank cards, they always put him on either Shakur card or a Tio card or a Jared Anderson card or a Keyshawn card. Like he is a top prospect, and I can't imagine that he doesn't go his entire career without winning a world title. At least he's a very good prospect.
He's that good. He's that good.
Yeah, no, it looks exciting. I'm gonna keep an eye out for him.
And the way Top Rank, he's at the perfect promotion because Top Rank know when it comes to American talent how to match them up to progress them in their career. So that's one to watch out for, especially next year. I think he's going to go hard in his next year. Like again, probably maybe another 4 fights, and he's going to be really good. And they're going to keep stepping up the level. Ob says, that's his. He's been smoking guys on undercards since he was 18. Yeah, he's a top talent to watch out for.
Yeah.
Any other prospects that you guys want to give a shout out to?
So I think. Even though you can't really call him a prospect because of what he done in the Olympics. But it's the year that Andy Cruz turned.
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing.
And his last performance, especially his first fight, we could have seen more. I feel like people that knew him wanted to see a bit more.
Yeah.
But the way he finished off his second fight was exceptional, and that's what we expect of someone of Andy Cruz's caliber. Such a great technician, such a student of the sport, the sweet science, and very exciting 2024 to come from him. Even the manner in which he referred to Keyshawn Davis as his son after the fight, he added, and the way Eddie Hearn is kind of instigating that little battle between them two, I think it's delicately poised for a very, very exciting fight sometime in the later end of 2024.
Yeah, that's a good shot. Is there anyone else do you think I missed that deserves a shot?
I mean, Jalalev potentially, now that
you're right.
Yeah, I know he's had a few pro fights and he keeps going in and out of amateurs and the pro game, but I'm sure he's going to consolidate himself to professional boxing. No, I hear it. But yeah, Jalalev and potentially Itama as well.
Yeah, Itama's is a very good shot as well. Especially Andrew Cruz. I feel like the reason why I didn't think about him as a prospect is because I just feel like he's like 2 fights probably away from being a world contender. Like he's a guy that should be, on paper, he should be competing for a world title in 2024. Like he's really that good. He's really that well. That's brilliant. I think we covered in terms of prospect. I don't consider Adam Azim a prospect because I think he's also European title. I think you're now contender level, so you're not that this award's too old for you now. So and the last thing, just round of the year. Which round do you think was the best round? So I'll start off. So I'll give you guys some time to think. Oshaki Foster versus Rocky Hernandez, round 11. That fight was so good, Matchroom had to make a separate video of just that round and put it on YouTube. And
I've seen that.
It was so good.
Very good round.
Rocky got hurt. He was backing up, and then he hurt Oshaki towards the end, and he had him hurt, and it was just a back and forth, and you were just like, wow, how did these two survive that round? So for me, that's round of the year. I think that was the best round that we've had. Any other rounds that stands out to you in terms of the best round of the year?
For once, I got nothing to say, really. I don't.
That's fair.
I can't really think of a
it's tough because it's tough because we think of fights, but we don't really think of rounds. So,
specific rounds.
Yeah, I can't really think of one. The thing is, the rounds that we do remember are the rounds that are very dominant.
Yeah,
exactly.
So like, I will always remember Crawford round 7. Crawford Spence round 7. You'll remember that, or you'll remember something where something.
You know what, that's fair. Yeah, but that's fair. That's fair. You can say that if that's your round of the year, because again, I think round of the year shouldn't just always be 50-50s, but it just should be towards entertainment. What do you think is the best round or most iconic round of the year?
Yeah,
no, I hear you, but I always think like round of the year is your first nomination is something that fits the bill a bit more, where you just see two guys go back and forth, but just going back and forth non-stop and giving and taking. So...
All right, man. What are you watching? Ron says Davis Cruz is a fight that will decide who goes for world titles. I think he's talking about Keyshawn Davis and Andy Cruz.
Yeah,
they have to make that fight at some
point. Not the other Davis Cruz.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not Davis anymore. It's Abdul Wahid.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. So
I think that covers it. Our sort of awards for the year. So look, what a brilliant year! It took us an hour and a half to cover all of them because that's how good this year was. There's so much to talk about, and I do hope it does seem like on paper 2024 is shaping up to be good. We've obviously got Fury Usyk to look forward to. I know in March there's going to be a big Saudi card that they're going to try to get through. We've got Better BF Smith to look forward to in 2 weeks, which obviously we'll cover. We've also got Bivol versus for undisputed light heavyweight, whoever it is, Better BF Smith. That is going to happen next year. So hopefully, you know, 2024 can follow up with a good lead with 2023. So, but thank you, 2023 in boxing. It was really a good year, man. Like, this was a very good year to be a boxing fan.
Most definitely.
Yeah.
And once again, thank you guys for having me on here. Thank you to all the viewers as well, and people leaving the comments and whatnot for the whole year. Deeply appreciated from us guys here at Ringside
Yep.
Fracas. And we look forward to your continued support in 2024, and we'll also try to carry on doing these shows and giving you guys our ideologies with boxing and our opinions and whatnot. And yeah, hopefully a good 2024 for all of you viewers, all of you guys here as well. Wish you guys all nothing but the best.
Yep. And if you're watching, please click subscribe on YouTube. If you're watching on YouTube, like, comment, subscribe. And also, if you're watching on, if you're listening on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, give us 5 stars. And again, to a happy new year, and we'll see you next week in the new year. Take care.
Take it easy.
Take it easy, guys.
Peace, guys.